All right, I'm recording an man, John, I told you, best face. Yeah, it's all right. um, so first things first, let's do a quick update on Cows Operator. Last week, Cyril gave us a really good update. Cyril, if you want to do it again, or Jim, you're here today. If you want to take a stab at it, or you guys can double team on this.
Well, yeah,
uh,
sorry I missed last week. I definitely would like to give some update, which is let's see. So there's a bunch of stuff collected that's Cyril asked me, hey, what's like the release policy? And for the first few months, we tried to go with one release per month. But then, summer hit and I didn't want to stress anyone out. So I was like, okay, it's okay if we miss a month. And then I think we ended up waiting like 8 weeks between releases then, or maybe nine. That was fine. Then the fall, I think people got busy with other work. We got another release out in like just after KubeCon. And now, we have some stuff built up that we could release. It's fine. I pushed a little bug fix release. The release machinery is better than before. I'd like the documentation to get better. Um, and, have talked to Chris Bradford a bunch about that. Um, so that's kind of like what has happened. And then what can yet happen is I promised Frank that I was going to get up an example of how to create some Docker images that are compatible. I put that in the as a comment to the ticket today, and I made like just a personal GitHub repo. It's just an example. Um, it's not messy, but I wanted to like write a little more around it. But you could start to see what's going on, maybe, especially if you look at the second Docker file in there. Um,
I tried to access what you sent, and I got a 404 with
Yeah,
no.
Jeremiah, who joined, he pointed it out. He's like, "Hey, 404," and I was like, like the default settings would make a private repo. It should be there now. Sorry about that for the hiccup. For if you saw the ping come through, yeah, it probably didn't work until half an hour after the GitHub email went out. Um, oh, my camera's been off. So, things are moving along. Not. It's great to see basically how many different people who don't all work together every day are kind of concerned and contributing stuff and contributing ideas or docs or examples or frequently asked questions. Um, I've wanted to talk about like who like kind of committer rights, and I know Chris Bradford was talking about maybe moving CAS operator to the Kate Sandra org. Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable just sort of being a team player here. I don't really want to be like the central organizing force. So I mean, things are moving in the right direction. I think we just need to be more organized.
Right. Well, I mean, there are some orange tickets. I'm calling them orange, the color and Cyril in GitHub. And Cyril, last week you were talking about some of these were moving around backup. How is that going?
Yeah, so we had some discussions with John around backup. Some tickets were created. I don't know if some references were added to the ticket I created. Maybe we should add some references to your new ticket in there, John. But I know there were some tickets on Cassandra and maybe on the Medusa operator, but I'm not sure on that side. Or it needed to happen at some point. So I also asked John for a list of the current supported features and the missing features based on what we said before. We added a new feature in our backup where we can restore a table as another table, so a new name, as long as the structure is already existing. So yeah, those features are going to be wanted if we migrate for sure. Um, and besides that, yeah, I think I just wanted to, yeah, try to get those issues, being worked on fast. Yeah, they're standing there, but I know you're working on a a major release of Cassandra. So that's understandable. But yeah, at some point, yeah, we're gonna need more force on those tickets.
Just a quick follow-up
Mhm.
about the tickets. Where, unfortunately, there's not. I don't think there's a single good spot to create them, because depending on what it is, we may have changes that we need. To touch Medusa, Kaz operator, and then the Medusa operator. And I had explained to Cyril that hasn't been well defined, but the process that I've been following is, since most people on the Kate Sander side, since most people probably they're looking at the Kate Sander repo, even if I've got to do a bug fix, say in the Medusa operator, I'll create the issue in the Kate Sander repo and just and then then of course in the PR would go to the whatever repo, just because that has the best visibility. But I'm happy to create tickets wherever it's going to be the most convenient and make most sense for people to do that, and just and link them as necessary. But I just wanted to share that. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of backup restore related tickets in the Kate Sander repo right now. There's a backup restore label. I don't think there's a ticket yet. In fact, let me rephrase it. I know that there currently is not tickets for all of the features that Cyril has gone through with me. So they'll still need to be written up yet.
All right, very good. So Jim dropped that little nugget about moving repos or centralizing them a bit, just to get them out of the DataStax org for now. I think this is just a discussion point, not a decision. Chris, you were the one who brought it to me. Do you want to talk about it a bit?
Yeah, we've been talking about it a bit internally, and it really the goal of not just Kate Sander, the Helm charts, but also of Kaz operator and Kaz config builder and Kaz config builder definitions, and all of these efforts, right, has been around running Cassandra on Kubernetes, period, right? And we felt that bringing these together under a common organization with those goals is a key part of that, and to make it less disjoint. And so that's the part of the thoughts that went behind there. One of the other things we've noticed, at least while working on the Kate Sander pieces, right now, a lot of the Helm chart updates to Kaz operator are locked to Kaz operator releases, despite some changes there not actually requiring a change to the Kaz operator. And we wanted to make kind of that life cycle a little bit shorter, if you will, to get features iterated on in the Helm chart that, again, don't require changes within the realm of Kaz operator. So that was one of the other motivating factors. But I'd love to get some feedback here on Cyril, Frank, on your views in this space, and maybe some of the gotchas that you could see happening.
Sorry, I missed your point. Your question. I was answering something. So
are you concerned with Kaz operator and like Kaz config builder and all that getting moved under the Kate Sander GitHub organization?
No.
The repos aren't changing. The Docker coordinates would change to be under the Kate Sander Docker org. But do you see any issues with that or have any concerns?
No, not at all. It's okay for me.
Excellent.
Yeah, the discussion that Chris and I were having was, starting to peel it away from the DataStax org. This is a good way to do that. The Kate Sander org is somewhat independent. It got moved around. It's not a DataStax repo. So that's an eye towards the future. Like, what is this going to mean in the future? And you know, my personal point of view on these sorts of things are, this is an open source motion, not a, you know, and it doesn't need to land in DataStax specifically. I mean, it's been okay there, you know, and that's the other thing I worry about is, are we going to break something that isn't broke or fix something that's not broken? But as I'm looking at more participation in the community, I think it just has better optics overall.
Yeah, I think Kate Sandra seemed to hit a nerve in a good way, and like we've seen a lot of people come in interested to use it. So if it's more confusing for it to stay under DataStax, that's bad. If it's more confusing to change it because we've started to get some expectation to look for it there, I don't have very strong feelings here. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, the way I find CAS operator is either I look at my GitHub notifications and click on the link, or I Google CAS operator. So, yeah. Some of us may have it memorized. Just type it in. Yeah.
I do think if we want to talk about like the documentation, like kind of nesting or not nesting or whatever, like I think there's something to that.
In that regard specifically, there is a project spinning up right now to get a CAS operator documentation website launched. I'm working with some external contributors to do design and the site creation. Obviously, we got to bring a bunch of the content to the table, but that is actively happening right now. Whether or not it should be nested underneath the Kate Sandra project or underneath the Kate Sandra domain, I'm punting that for now. It's going to have its own TLD, despite being under the Kate Sandra organization. So cas-operator.io, there's nothing there right now. You can go to it. It's not going to load anything, but that's where it will be living. And so that is something that has been sorely needed, and we recognize that and want to get the process started there. It's and so will also be open source, part of the CAS operator repo. So as long as it's made its way, a commit has made its way into the docs folder on, I think master is the main branch for that repo, it will get published out to that website. That's the goal. It's similar. We're doing the same thing in Kate Sandra. If you submit a PR to the docs folder and it gets merged into main, it gets deployed. And so anybody can put docs changes out there. It's using the same template as Kubernetes. So it's Doxy on top of Hugo. So it's just Markdown in a bunch of folders. And like I said, you should see some traction on that in the coming weeks.
I think that from a community standpoint, I'm anxious to get potentially some contributors in that arena. That's one of the hardest things to try to get contributors for, is like, oh, you liked it? Can you write some documentation? Yeah, it sounds exciting, but it does help quite a bit. You know, there's as long as you have a clean way to get it done, sometimes it's easier. So, you know, I think that's a good thing to demonstrate. I might even make a quick video on how you can contribute to the docs if you want to. I think some of the first PRs we had were like, hey, you know, this word was wrong. And, you know, it was just like a really, really simple PR. And those are great. I mean, we'll take a million of those every day. Well, a couple more.
We could definitely take a lot of those. Yeah, we've definitely gotten some more. The first one like astonished me, but now it's like at least like 2 a month or so of small changes or small things hitting the repo. Or somebody pointed out like, oh, you're using BusyBox latest. I was like, yeah, I regret that, and I regret using. And then he was like, well, you could just tag it. And I was like, oh, that's already better than what I had, so sure, and got that accepted pretty quickly. Yeah, I think that's moving. Like, given where this was when we opened it up at the end of March, like we've moved pretty far forward in a lot of ways, but yeah, there's a a healthy gap to cover still yet. I think it's interesting the questions that come up that we probably just need doc. That's a lot of questions come up that I think just docs are the bug fix for, where like questions about how to manage the logs or log volumes, or it seems like folks who've not run something in Kubernetes before, which I find interesting. Like they need sort of some general advice to set up a logging sidecar or a log aggregation system, which is fine, but I didn't expect would sort of be our role in Kubernetes community, is to help kind of give people pointers back to the official Kubernetes docs that show this really well, right? So I think there's something there, Patrick, like something you'd be interested in, is like we're getting people who know more about Cassandra than they do about Kubernetes, but they're determined to kind of try to push through there.
That's a really good signal. And one of the things that I've found with documentation isn't even, it's helpful to not only have docs contributions, that's a really big deal, but also to know where we're falling short. One of my favorite metrics back from my search engine days or search systems days was we'd always put a Google event on a search result that returned 0 hits. Because obviously they came to us for a reason, and they didn't find what they were looking for. And I want to know what they were looking for, because I mean, maybe we don't have content on it, or maybe we do and we haven't really explained it well or hit the right terms. So I think whether people are driving our new user or getting started steps, or looking for where they would hook in like Promtail or Fluentd, right, to understand like for logging, they don't necessarily need to know like step by step, this is how you set up the logs for Promtail, but they might need to know, hey, you should probably add a container in the pod template spec here, and the values, the options for this container, and then point that out to the Promtail docs or what have you. That's what I kind of see as being helpful to the community.
Yeah, this is like what we're trying to get with a mature project. This is what I see, like over a year or two, the maturity of a project is in all of the contributions that are possible. Even thinking like Google Summer of Docs, that sort of thing, where we can potentially get more focused help on that. And if we go to Google Summer of Docs, which is a thing, it's really nice to present something that says, oh, here, and here's the easy way to do it. Because, we can get a real good pull on that if we have an easy way to get in. Cool. All right. So just kind of bottoming out the discussion on this move of repos, it doesn't sound like anybody has any strong objections. I would like to make sure that we get as many voices in here as possible, and probably just my first guess is like, okay, we'll just throw this in the ASF Cassandra Kubernetes room and say, hey, look, we're going to do this, and any strong objections. But I don't know how, or even putting it on the mailing list, or I don't even know where to put this. I'm open to suggestions.
Do you think that this kind of conversation will be welcome on the ASF list, Jeremiah? I'm asking you specifically on this one. Maybe.
I don't see why not.
Okay.
But
I
would just put it, but I would put in I think the Slack is probably
okay,
a better place for the discussion. I don't know.
There just hasn't been any engagement
For people that
on
care
the
about
mailing
this.
list.
But
Yeah, that's
if
it.
we wanted, we could put it out on the mailing list. I don't know that you're going to get replies from anyone more than who would reply on the Slack. But
yeah, so you
probably definitely want to send something out on the users list, like when you're doing it, or possibly even before you do it, just to tell users, hey, we're moving this. If you were searching for it here, it's going to be over here now.
Yeah, and we're going to try and do the platform native ways to do that. So in GitHub, we do a transfer of ownership. So 301s are put in place, and the same thing with
Yeah.
Docker Hub.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully we
Just
capture
saying.
that there as well.
Yeah. I mean, so, and the other thing I was talking to you about this earlier, like we at DataSec, we have some other projects that the CAS operator kind of relies on, and I think it would probably be good if we put them all in that same place.
Yeah, you've definitely shaped the plan there. I think we've expanded the scope a bit to include those dependencies.
I think to put it on the mailing list would be quite good, because there hasn't been much talk about operators on the mailing list recently, as I think. And because we're talking about moving repos, that may trigger some interest from the developers. They may come have a look, or maybe participate. So, and at least it will be written in there instead of in the Slack, where it's just like happening but disappearing as well. So I would vote for the mailing list personally. My 2 cents.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
So it sounds like Cassandra is the right place for that. Thanks for the tip on that, Jeremiah, because I wasn't sure the right which one to choose. So that sounds like a good one.
I mean, it just depends on what your goal is, Chris, right? If your goal is to get developers knowing about you doing this, you put it on like the core Cassandra committers knowing, you put it on Cassandra dev. And if you want users to know about it, you put on user. So it just depends what your goal is in doing it, right? If your goal is, hey, do you think this is bad if we do this? You might put it on dev. If your goal is announce that we're doing this, put it on user.
Yep, that's the guidance I was looking for. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with over communicating. I mean, there's no one's going to say, "Wow, can you stop talking about this?" No, they'll just do what they normally do: is ignore the mailing list. But I mean, yeah, it's I tend to over communicate as a default if we can. If it needs to go on multiple mailing lists, that's fine. Even you can even put it like on Kate-Sandra mailing list or something, just so that anyone who has anything to do with Kate or with Cassandra and Kubernetes, knows that there's something different. Might as well.
Yeah, just I'm guessing Chris will drive this forward, but just ping me when that's happening. I think that the GitHub Actions will probably break for some stupid to legitimate reason, and I don't know. I'd like to keep on that stuff, because it's worse when you have something that's like, oh, someone reported a pretty urgent bug, and I want to get it patched and fixed, which happened like a week and a half ago, and with like decommissioning not working, and they were using it, and I'm like, okay, well, and they had the fix. So it was good that all the automation was just like, okay, just fire it. But this isn't to say it's a blocker. I just would like to try to get ahead of it.
I think
Jim,
there's
I told you, stop using IP addresses for everything. Domain names, man. Domain names. See, this is what happens.
always DNS, Patrick. But to that point, yeah, secrets might get impacted by this change.
Yeah.
I think there is a follow-up conversation to be had around what we're doing with artifacts, specifically as PRs are merged. We should probably have a location where you can get at those artifacts if maybe a bug fix has come in that you need right now before a release is cut.
Yeah, that exists.
I think
just
that
not
includes both the Docker.
yeah, it's just not documented, but it's all there. Like if you look at the actions, like we pushed a GitHub package, whatever GitHub called it. We didn't upgrade to the not beta. The GitHub stuff is like been underwhelming, but anyway, it does go off. So like I hear you. It's just not documented. So
Right. So we should have it documented and be open that where that exists. And I think that's true for Kate-Sandra as well, for what it's worth.
Speaking of, got an update for Kate-Sandra. Yeah, nice segue.
There's a CAS operator update real quick.
Oh, okay, never mind. Back it up.
5.1 was released that had some changes in it, and the Helm charts for 1.5.1 were published as of yesterday. that's something else that needs to be automated. My apologies on the, I think, week-long delay on that. It's probably closer to 2 weeks. COVID time is weird. That's all I have for CAS operator. But Kate Sandra, John or Jeff, do you want to take the lead on that one?
Sure. Let's see. We haven't been publishing any recently updates to the charts because there's just been a lot of churn with changes, and I got pinged by a couple people internally with DataStax where they ran into saying, "Hey, something broke," and I thought, well, just to cut down on those transitory errors. So there's a bunch of things in flight. I think later today, some point after the meeting, I'm going to go ahead and push an update with some of those changes. So working towards the 1.0, let's see, one of the things trying to do, so we have support now for 3.11.7, 8, and 9. And we need to submit a PR. Eric is not on the call. I don't think he is, to update CAS operator to add support for beta 4. There's a validation check in the CRD that the regex needs to be updated. So it's a real trivial thing so that we can support running with the latest beta. And then let's see, some initial authentication support is almost done, and some ingress changes as well. So I think that's at a high level. Oh, another thing that we did, for anybody that's done much time with Helm, we'd love to hear any feedback or thoughts on this. So we've gone through just kind of or still going through a maturation process of starting out with 1 or 2 charts and kind of lumping all of the various components into it. So we have the CAS operator, the very multiple operators getting deployed within that one chart, the Reaper, Prometheus, all that. And we just, after kind of taking a step back and looking in some discussion, felt that a better approach, a little bit more sound engineering, we kind of refactor it and start breaking those separate components out into their own charts. So that's been going on as well. And that'll also make it also facilitate some other things, making it easier from the end user getting into different topology situations. So if you want to deploy Kate Sandra, and let's say you want to use a cluster scope deployment of CAS operator, makes it a little bit easier to do that. You can go ahead and independently or using the components independently. And so we've hit some interesting, say, nuances with Helm along the way. Hopefully I get a chance to document or write some of those things up at some point. But so that's a big change. You'll see that, or if you've been paying attention to the GitHub repo, you'll see that there's several charts now, and there's going to be a couple more. One for Stargate. I think that might be the last one. I think that covers the big highlights.
One question for you about that. Would that make it easier for you to make changes? Meaning you won't have to make changes on the Cassandra Helm chart and the CAS operator Helm chart. You would just make them at the lower level?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So yes, that's where there's still some work to do there. Right now, we have the charts get on the CI GitHub Actions are pushing charts with the one chart repo, and we've discussed. In fact, I had created a ticket, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago, about having another chart repo. So let's just call the current one for stable. So so that one would, so anytime a pull request is merged for a chart, that the current repo would be updated with that chart version. And then let's say when we go to cut a release of Kate Sandra, the stable repo is updated. And that's what I think we're trying to move towards. There's some work there that has to be done with the GitHub Actions to facilitate that. That'll make it a little bit easier though for So like the scenario I described, the example I gave earlier where somebody was running into some issues because of the changes I was introducing, they said, oh, they're using, just grabbing the latest chart version available and things were breaking as a result of changes we're making. Well, they could stick on the stable version and not worry about it. Other users who want the latest and greatest, but maybe don't want to have to worry about checking out the Git repo, they could go ahead and just pull from that development chart repo. So I think with the changes, we should be able to have it such that, yeah, if you make just a change to the one of those other charts besides the Kitsana chart, be able to, you know, on the CI have the changes get updated.
It's and yeah, another feature that well, so in that vein, yeah, I think that's important. It's a sign of the project maturing to have to deal with some of these issues. And just like we said about CAS operator, how we're pushing artifacts out for specific pushes to those main branches, I'd like to see something similar with Cassandra and not affect stable, right? Because that's certainly a concern. There are some discussions happening around how dependencies are stored, chart dependencies are stored. Right now, the tarballs of those charts are in repo, and those are going to get dropped. There's going to be some documentation coming out about how to get the latest version. It's Helm dep update is the right command. We want to make sure that it's very clear how to get those dependencies, such as Kubernetes stack. Separately, though, there's been a lot of work in the Stargate integration space. So the PR for that is merged, but there's also been a PR merged for Ingress that's on the main branch right now. And so any of the HTTP APIs for talking to Stargate are now using native Kubernetes Ingress objects. So whatever Ingress you're using, it should just work. Ingress with TCP is weird on Kubernetes. You kind of have to go your own road with custom resources based off the Ingress controller you're using. We've done a little bit of research here. The Gateway API looks like that's going to be a solution down the road, but I think that's still kind of forming now. If you're following along with the head of Kubernetes. So one of the things that came up that was an interesting edge case that's worth talking about is if I'm running Cassandra on Kubernetes and I have applications outside of Cassandra, there are a few ways to talk to it, or outside of, I'm running Cassandra on Kubernetes and I have applications outside of Kubernetes, not Cassandra. How do they talk to the cluster? Well, there's node port and there's Ingress right now, or you can do some really cool things with networking, but it's tricky. We have documentation around how to run with Ingress, and it works. It's pretty interesting how it works with if you decide to use SNI and TLS and all that stuff. But when we bring Stargate into the mix, that's where things get interesting. And we're trying to think through if there is a case where you would want to expose both the Cassandra cluster nodes as well as the Stargate nodes to the Ingress. Or if you are using an Ingress and you are using Stargate, do you need to expose the main Cassandra cluster? I refer to it as the storage cluster, which, yeah, I don't know what the right term is. Jeremiah might have a term. Really, yeah, fair enough. So do you think that there is a use case where you would want to expose both of those things? Or do you think if Stargate is deployed and available via Ingress, there's no reason to expose the Cassandra cluster native port, since Stargate, being the it here, also exposes a native port for communicating with the cluster? Frank and Cyril, are you using Stargate yet, or are you testing it out at all? Fair enough. Okay.
I think
I could possibly see people wanting to do it. I mean, if it's like super hard to allow people to expose them both on different port services or whatever, then okay. But
I mean, if I just want a CQL port, yeah, I'm gonna play that role. I'm gonna be that guy. If I just want a CQL port, I don't want to install a bunch more infrastructure to get a CQL port. So I don't want to add Stargate. I just want my nodes with port 9042.
So if you do not have Stargate deployed, we would point at the Cassandra cluster, assuming you have ingress enabled. But if you're deploying Stargate, do you see a use case where you would want to expose the non-Stargate hosts through the ingress?
As an advanced feature, yes.
Okay. That's helpful.
Yeah.
If only for the case where like, oh, someone finds a bug in Stargate and we need to easily flip on the other port to point things at it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. The issue that we have with ingress, just to be clear, is if you are not using TLS with the SNI header, you have to have a different external port for each cluster you're running inside of Kubernetes, which is gross, but it is what it is. With TLS and SNI, you can kind of get around that. It's kind of hidden away in the Java driver or in our driver in the drivers right now. I'd love to see a documentation push and maybe a push on the driver side of things to make the SNI logic maybe a little bit cleaner and a little bit more well documented for external usage. Right now, it's there, you can use it, but you kind of have to dig through the weeds to figure out how to create the SSL context that uses the SNI, and then you have to create the SNI endpoints based off the host IDs, and that's not user friendly at all at the moment. And I'd like to see some cycles there. In that, so that's leads to another follow-up thing. There were some discussions recently about host IDs and, well, more specifically, how to do that kind of routing. And if you want to use host IDs as a unique identifier for nodes, if you want to use the host name that the stateful sets are creating, the ordinal host names, for doing that TLS routing, like what do you guys think is the right way to go about this? Any thoughts in that space? Because it's tricky. We can also spend some cycles getting some examples together and have a better conversation about this at a future.
Yeah, we need more opinions in here. That's what we need. I'm going to invite more opinionated people. Everybody here is just way too okay with stuff.
Fair enough.
Actually, that would be my ideal. I mean, I love all of you, but we need some new blood in here. And Eric's not new enough. I really, and actually, this is a call to action that I think everyone here should take to heart, is we need more users in here that are, I think we are users / practitioners, so we do both, but we're building and using at the same time. I've been trying to encourage a lot of other groups that are interested, they're like putting up their hand to show up at this meeting. It's really hard. This is like trying to get someone to show up at a meeting like after dinner, it's like, I'm going to go lay on the couch. But I think this is where this group needs to start evolving to, because there's a really good chance that we'll get some good interchange here. And I'm not saying that, we don't have great opinions here, but I really do love the breadth that we could potentially get.
I think there's also a problem of focus. I think, we need to focus on the particular parts of the problem, because I look at our contribution. We're coming from CASCOP, which we're still developing. Now we're trying to get into CAS operator and try to make it work. But then at the same time, you went over to Cassandra. So we had to look around at Cassandra. And now we saw that for the backup and restore, it's Medusa. So we go to Medusa and we try how it works. And now we come to a meeting, we talk about Stargate, which is another part of the problem. So it's quite difficult to have people that can follow you on all the different parts where we don't know any of them in the first place. So it's that's why we can't say anything.
No, I'm not, and I'm not accusing you.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I agree.
try to put yourself into other people's shoes, and well, okay, we actually looking at releases of CAS operator, and we're saying, oh, we haven't looked at Stargate yet, but well, we just don't have time. We can't do that. I mean, we would like to, but
Yeah,
just don't really know what it is in the first place.
no, that's fair. And I remind everyone that this is also being recorded, and we do get a lot of views on that. So there are people that get updates, and that's okay. They must love getting a weekly update of our Brady Bunch. Right here, I can see on my screen. But that's good feedback, Frank. It almost makes me think that we have two different kinds of these SIG meetings. One that's just user based, and one that's more like we have a user and a dev mailing list, where we have a user and a builder, or user and a dev meeting. That is a lot harder. The CNCF does something like that. I don't know how well that works for them, but I don't know how does that sound, or what does that sound like to everyone here?
I don't know that we need to have two meetings. We just try to advertise this one more that, hey, users are invited.
Yeah, well, I did that on the user mailing list. I said, here's here's my proposed agenda. It'll be like some updates on various projects, and then at the end, bring your questions, and we'll answer them. Yeah, no, crickets. That's hard, but maybe that if we reverse.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't know that having a second meeting is going to help at all. You're just going to have a second meeting with the same people in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we have room in this meeting for users to come too.
Yeah, that's true.
But the point is good. I mean, I think there's discussions that are more user focused and developer. Like, there's something I'm just trying to find a ticket in the Kate Sander repo. We're having discussion and around, okay, what kind of default settings do we want? What are we targeting for for when things that are installed for defaults for various components, namely Cassandra, and we want to target developer setup that, and it's trying to figure out what those same things, what are same defaults. And Valerie, she chimed in from on the ticket from, I think she's from Pythian.
Yeah,
she's in the Raleigh area. Yeah, I've chatted with her a little bit on LinkedIn, and made a comment about doing some testing or something else. We're just trying to cram Docker Cassandra nodes into Docker containers and testing. And I think we've all felt that pain at different points when you're I know on previous projects or previous job, we're trying to figure out, okay, how can I tune Cassandra down so it's not gonna, because I can run 3 or 4 nodes locally for doing different things. So and I think that's applicable, here. It's people, whether it's working in Kate Sander or on the operator, being able to do things reasonably. And it requires, and I think to make that happen requires a little bit more precision and understanding with what dials and knobs to turn in Cassandra to do that. Depending on what you're trying to test. I mean, if you're just trying to deploy a cluster in Kubernetes and making some configuration change within your stateful set, and maybe it's sufficient to just make sure the cluster's up running, then I don't think you need to have each node running with a gig heap. So that I was looking for the ticket. I couldn't find it, but so, of course,
must be a really important one if it's right on the top of your list there.
Somebody deleted it. I'll put it in the ASS Slack. So if anyone wants to chime in, I'd love to get additional feedback on that.
Closed won't fix. Yeah, one of my favorites. Out of scope. All right, I had one other little item that came up this week with me. I was working with a company called Witfu, and they're doing some Cassandra 4 testing with containers. They've they found some pretty interesting settings changes that might go into the Cassandra project. JD, you know about these. You saw some of that traffic. But just FYI, I know that since we're all pretty much running Cassandra and containers, just to let you know, this is for on beta 3, not beta 4. I got a huge download, so I'm gonna go pick through it and see what changes are. But essentially what it is some changes in like JVM settings for JDK 11, which look like some stuff got carried over from JDK 8, which aren't really relevant. So I'm going to look through it, but just I think this is a crowd that would probably appreciate some changes to the container. All right. Does anybody have anything else? We could sit around and watch John try to find that ticket. No? All right. It's very exciting. Share your screen, John, so we can see how confused you are. It'd be great. All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up. Thanks, everyone, for another good meeting. We'll meet again in 2 weeks, much earlier, for those of you who are farther east than me. So we'll see you then, and see you on the mailing list.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.